Welcome. We're going to start this animation tutorial over in Photoshop first. So I've taken the image that's used in the Disney Multiplane video and recreated it as a series of layers inside of Photoshop. So we have a background layer, we have a moon, we have the hill far in the distance, we have the hill that's not as far, so it's only far, not far, far. Then we have the house and our middle ground. I just put those on one layer because at some point we don't need that many layers. Then I have the tree on the right, I have the foreground road and fence, finally the tree up front. Now ideally I would be making these so that the pieces are, the trees would be extended beyond the frame. I would make them bigger, but this is going to be enough to come to a understanding of how to make a multiplane file inside of Toon Harmony. So let's jump over to Harmony and we'll get started by importing our image. Now I'm going to select that Photoshop file and I'm going to select create layers based on file names. I don't want to make it flat as a single layer, and we will let it come in as a bitmap drawing. And that will allow us to maintain all of the transparency. We can click on the convert to Toon vector drawing, and we'll see that that probably isn't going to give us quite the results that we're looking for. So we'll see what happens here and see why we'll probably want to leave it as a bitmap drawing instead of vector. So we can see that it struggled to understand what is happening with the artwork, so let's undo that and we'll go through that process again. This time I'll choose import images. I will keep it as a bitmap drawing. We can clamp our alpha straight. That will allow us to have transparency with this. And then it's like, okay, create individual layers. Yes, I don't want a single layer, groups. Transparency straight, okay, click OK, wait for a moment, get our spinning wheel. It's not the spinning beach ball of doom, it's just the fact that it is processing those different layers of Photoshop depending on the speed of your computer, the resolution of the file you're bringing in, etc. We can have all kinds of fun stuff happen. So now that we have done this and brought it in, it looks, well, about the same. But we're going to animate this. So first thing we need to do is we have to jump over into our node view so that we can start moving these layers around in space. So let's click on my node view and see what happened. So if I look at this and zoom in a little bit, we'll see it composited it into a multiplane. So it kept all the layer names. So it really is going to be important if you bring in Photoshop documents that you do name your layers inside of Photoshop. So we can see in Photoshop I have the layers named, so then those names do carry over when I am in Harmony. So let's go back into the node view here. And I'm going to just pull this composite down a little bit so I can select these layers and spread them out horizontally, zoom out a little bit. We'll give each one a peg. So Control-Shift-P, Command-Shift-P if you're on a Mac. That connects those, and now I will group these with a single peg, so I can now, with those pegs selected, hit Command-P. That now groups those up as a peg. That's just going to make things a little bit easier when we're trying to arrange our assets here. So now we can exit out of the full screen mode. You can see we have everything there. I can collapse that. Good to go. So this drawing layer we'll probably delete later. It's not really harming or hurting anything. We're just going to leave it parked there for the moment. And what we want to do is we want to add in another window here, which will be a different view. So there's different views that we can work with inside of Harmony. Currently we have the camera view, but what I want right now is the top view. We're going to work with the top view, then we'll take a look at our perspective view here, and we'll just pull that up in this window. Let's see, P perspective, okay. So currently, yeah, it looks about the same. And we can scrub around there. And If I hold down Command, Option, or Control Alt on Windows, you'll see how I can spin my view to get a better view of the perspective that's happening. Okay, that's good. I'm just going to make this window a little bit smaller here because I'm going to need some more room. If I hit the arrow here, it closes that out. We'll zoom out here into this top view. Now, one thing you'll notice in the top view, I do have my different layers here. And this triangle is representing our default camera. So this is the default camera view. We're going to add a camera object so we can put a peg on it and actually animate the camera in a little bit. But first what we want to do is we want to move these layers around a little bit. So I'm going to zoom out. And so this is now showing me this is the full entirety of my camera view. Now, we can take any of these layers and I can select that layer. You can see how it selected the peg for that layer. Now, just a reminder, I do have peg selection mode turned on for my tool. I usually have that on as a default. So anytime we're working with the animation tools, we'll want to do it that. So this is where we're going to play with the advanced animation tools. So we have the translate tool, which allows me, I can click on that and you can see how I can move a layer around. I can move it back and forth within that Z space. So you can see, oh, look, it's shifting. That's really kind of cool. But what we really want to do is we want to maintain the relationship of the size of these layers because I drew them all kind of at the relative sizes that I want them to be. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to say grab the moon layer and at first we'll just let's see, let's deactivate the sky layer here, go down and find the sky. And I'll just turn the sky layer off. But what I don't want to have happen when we look at this is I don't want to now grab the moon layer and shift the moon layer back and notice how, oh, look, the moon is shrinking. I don't want the moon to shrink. I want it to stay the size I drew it in my picture and move it back. Well, the good part is Toon Boom added a tool for that, and it's called Maintain Size. So we have Translate, Rotate, Scale, Skew, and finally Maintain Size. So the Maintain Size one is super handy because now I can just take and push the moon all the way back, and we can see now if I go too far, it will disappear from my field of view. But it maintains the size of that moon in my scene. So if we go back to a more normal view, it's going to be there. If we look at our camera view, we can see it didn't shrink. But if I use the translate tool and move it, you'll see how it's changing size. So that's problematic. Oh, and we're on frame 2. Well, we don't want that. So let's click on that, delete that keyframe. Let's go back. Oh, turn the sky back on. So I'll reactivate the sky using, the letter A. So DNA is just like clicking on the eyeball next to a layer. Okay, so let's go back to frame 1. We're now here at frame 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this front tree and with the Maintain Size tool, actually, we're just going to select everything, push it back a little bit so I can move the camera in when I do start animating, so we'll get a little bit of motion going on there. And now if I hold down Shift and click, okay, come on. So hold down Shift, I can click on all my layers. And now I'm going to take those layers and push those layers back. Somehow we got the sky in the wrong position here because it's like, why is the sky there? What is going on? If we turn on our camera mat, we can see what's there. So let's just be faster just to clear that keyframe. Everything is selected. We'll push it back a little bit. So now if I correctly click on things and I'm holding down Shift and clicking on all my layers, now Maintain Size and push layers back. All right, hang on. Something, my mouse clicking is being difficult. So, oh, because I'm grabbing, gotta make sure I'm not grabbing the scene peg. So if we go back into the node here, while we're setting these up, I am going to, okay, that's, oh, the sky peg got disabled when I was trying to disable the sky. So when in doubt, now I'm just going to delete that peg. We'll put that peg back afterward. That way I don't worry about accidentally clicking on it. Now I have everything selected here. Let's try again. So now select all of those layers. We don't care what we see over here right now. It doesn't really matter. With those layers selected, we'll just push it. Oh, grab the maintain size. If you see it scale dramatically like that, you know you kind of messed up. Okay, so now, there we go. By having the scene peg there, that's why I was having issues clicking. So put the scene peg in afterward. Now I moved that tree. Now I will move the road back a little bit and everything else. Now hold down Shift, click on the road. Okay, we'll try again. Oh, it helps to hit the right modifier key. I was hitting the Control key, not the Shift key, which is why it broke. Yeah, I'm really off to a good start on this. All right, so then we had the road, then I have the tree. Hold down Shift, click on the tree. Yeah, so if you use the right modifier key, it works. Now I'm going to push the road way back, so it's a little further back because that's the road plus the house. So we'll push that back, hold down Shift, click that off. Now I'm going to take the far hill, far hill, and then we'll take the moon in the sky. Now if we go too far, we go out of the field of view, it disappears, so I'll just go all the way to the back. So it is the least amount of change going on. Okay. So we have all those layers pushed back in space. If we go into our perspective view and zoom in and out on that, we'll see that we now have perspective view with our scene. So with nothing selected. Let's make this a little wider so we can see what's going on. So because I am maximizing the view to the room, we're getting some interesting, because normally in an interior space you're not going to push everything to the entire field of view with the camera, so you're not going to be quite that dramatic. But when I'm doing demonstrations, it is nice to have more room to work. All right, so now let's click here, go back into the node view so I can add a parent node for everything here. Collapse that because that'll just make it easier while I'm animating. And now we can add in a camera. So there's a camera with the camera selected, give it a peg, and we get to animate our camera. So here is the camera. I will just collapse on the camera peg. We can see there is our drawing existing for our whole scene. Insert a peg for the camera on frame 1. Now I'm just going to jump over into, I don't know, frame 20 or some other random amount. And if I move off of maintain size and go to my translate tool, you'll see that I can now push. And if we turn on our frame mat, you'll see how I can now push into the scene. So you can see how we're pushing into that scene. So what I want to do is I move here. Let's pull back just right about here. And now I'm going to just go over a few frames. And this is where we can just go and start pulling down and pushing forward, kind of indicating that we are dropping down that roadway. I'm going to go grab and pull to the side over here a little bit. And now we'll go over another, this time another 20 frames, push past that. And you'll see how we can start to create this perspective in our scene. So it's creating that parallax by breaking our scene into layers. So that's a start, but now I'm going to just look at this camera peg. So either in the node view I can pull up its properties, or I click on the little kind of keyframing icon on it, and you'll see there's an option for enable 3D. Now if I click on that, we get a few more options that pop up. Namely, I can start working in multiple spaces. So if I'm here, not only do I potentially want to set that rotation, so right here I'm going to make sure I have a full keyframe, so F6, and I'm going to go to right about here and grab rotation. Now the reason I grab that rotation is I can rotate on the x-axis, so I can even start to rotate down. Now that tells me I need to also kind of have to adjust the scene. This is where you probably, when you bring your assets in, you need to make sure that you are setting them up appropriately or making them big enough. So now I'll go back to rotating. This time I'll rotate back the other way so we can rotate vertically. But now as I go to the side here, I want to rotate on the y-axis, so I'm going to pull that view over just a little bit. So we'll see how we've now gone from straight. The camera's turning. We can see that in our top-down view. And now as I move towards the house here, I am going to rotate the camera back this way a little bit, just changing my view. Now if I go too far, you'll see how the background starts to show, so then that's problematic. But we're able to take a flat scene, flat artwork, and start to create that sense of parallax or spatial depth. Now if I turn off the camera matte, you can see how those layers are moving in relation to each other because the scene has been broken down. So when we do this, we can really create some fun environments. It's even possible to take our drawing layers and turn all of our drawing layers in 3D. The same way that we enabled 3D on the camera, we can enable 3D on art layers, and you can construct entire 3D rooms. So you can have a floor, walls, ceiling, and when you do that, you can put your characters into those spaces and animate within that. And that's something that we will look at in an upcoming tutorial. So again, with the camera, once you have the camera in, you adjust your layers using maintain size, not translate, and you push them through to spatial relationships, and then you can use the rotate, translate tool to move the camera, and you can even start, there are other things you can do with the camera. So if our camera is here, now if I wanted to, say on this frame, we can even or grab the scale tool with the camera so we can see we can scale our scene on it, but we can also maintain size on the camera. Whoa, okay, we broke something there. Let's get some undos because that's not right. Okay. That was problematic. Let's redo. So somehow the camera just got totally Okay, so if I look here, so somehow the camera, I hit something to cause the camera to flip. So when I grabbed it with the maintain size, I somehow flipped it. All right, so now let's fix some of these rotation. Because they put a little bit of rotation in, and apparently my undo's lost that. So see, it's good when I break things during the video, then you can learn a couple things about, like, okay, how can I start to fix some of that? All right, so when I'm here, now I want to start rotating that view in onto my little cottage. So you can see how we're able to rotate that camera on X, Y, and Z space. But if we do take the camera and grab maintain size, if I push and pull, it does affect my field of view. It makes it wider or narrower. So now if I make that field of view skinnier, we can see it goes from skinny back to full. And now if I wanted to, I could pull it in, because effectively what we're doing is we're narrowing our field of view, and it's creating the equivalent of a zoom lens on a camera. So as we change that view, we're creating that zoom style lens. So now if I wanted my camera angle to get, I gotta be careful I don't go too wide. And this is where the top view is really useful. I can see if I am going too wide on it. So we can kind of start here, and if I wanted to be zoomed in, and now we switch back over to the translate tool, and I'll just pull out on my scene a little bit. Can't go too far because then I'll lose the background, so we're there. Let me push in. Now you'll notice I did lose by zooming in that much. I did start to lose the trees. So if I want the trees to show in my view, then I need to make sure that, you know, I haven't gone too narrow. So we'll go back to that view. Let's then set it up. Okay, so there we are, frame one. I'm happy with that. We move through, seeing the tree, and now we can zoom in. Now if I, right here, I think in this view I do want to pull down a little bit more just to get that sense of I almost dropped down the hill. And now in this view, start rising back up. So we're getting some sense that we're almost traveling on the road. So if your background assets are big enough, you really could start to follow a path. Now, of course, that movement is way too fast, so let's at least just move that keyframe out so it slows it down a little bit more. So play with the different tools. Know that we start out with maintain size to move all your layers into their relative positions. Add a peg onto a camera object, and then you can animate the camera using the translate tool. If you do pull up the properties for that peg, you can enable 3D on it, and that allows you to then use the rotate tool and rotate on both the X and Y axis and not just the Z axis, because by default we're only going to rotate on the Z axis, which is like this, when you are not in 3D. So that's the only rotate available to you in Harmony Essentials and Advanced, but Premium gives you access to the full 3D, so you can actually rotate in all three axes. So good luck and have fun animating.